All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today. Today we're going to talk about pre-health, pre-med orientation. So let's go ahead and jump right in and get started. Okay, so we're going to go over introductions, then we're going to talk about health beat overview and kind of what that is. We're going to talk about professions and academics as well today. We'll go over building experiences, some additional considerations. We'll actually cover events and resources today, and then we'll go over some Q&A. Okay, so just a little bit about me. My name is Jade Frame. I am the Associate Director for Pre-Health Pre-Med. I've been here at UCSD for about 3 years rather. And I've been in higher education for about 6. So my background, I got my bachelor's in neuroscience from the University of California, Riverside. And I was pre-pharmacy actually, and decided to switch that around and ended up actually going back for my master's in counseling with a specialization in college counseling and student services. So here I am, I'm here to help, and I'm going to go ahead and
Alrighty. My name's Ron Reyes, he, him. A little background about myself. I've been in higher education now 16, 17 years, give or take. I originally was a UC Santa Cruz undergraduate pursuing a dual major environmental science and arts. I ended up going more the way of the arts and preparing for high school education when I did a transition into actually doing admissions in higher education. So I come from, I went straight into college advisement. From there, I had about 6 years in admissions, another 6 years working at a different university for healthcare education, in particular, a school that had a very robust nursing program. And then after that, I've been here at UC for about 5 years. Before my role at the Career Center, I was a program manager working within healthcare education and our post-baccalaureate programs. So coming over here to the Career Center now for about 3 years, I'm very happy to support our pre-health students and kind of talk about all the different options you have in your profession.
great. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Health Beat, or really the Career Center, and then we'll jump into Health Beat. So there are 3 main groups of advising. As you can see here, there's arts and humanities, STEM, and pre-grad slash graduate. And so there are many folks that are available to help. Ron and I, as you can see at the bottom, are specifically for pre-health, pre-med. But if you have any general questions such as resume, cover letter, job search strategies, interviewing skills, anyone can help. So if you don't see Ron or myself, our names for one-on-one appointments on Handshake, definitely make an appointment with whoever is available. And we'll go over, making appointments and how to do that in a couple minutes. Okay, so let's talk about Healthy. Basically, what we do here at UCSD is help students explore, prepare, and apply for their career. And so definitely check out our Healthbeat website. It has a ton of information on there. We like students to look at the website first before they come to us, just to have baseline information, kind of the basic information, and then we can get a little bit deeper in the appointment with maybe specific questions that you have, with your journey and maybe your timeline for medical school, or your healthcare profession, professional school, or anything like that. So I want you guys to scan our QR code. So feel free to do that. We have different areas in healthcare that are on our website. So you'll see 9 different areas, which includes medicine, dentistry, pharmacy, PA, optometry, PCOT, veterinary medicine, public health, and nursing. All right. So let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so Healthy is the centralized pre-health advising and resource center on campus. We help with exploring and understanding the differences between health professions, providing advising and information on professional trends and admissions. So we really want you to understand, kind of how to be a competitive student. And so, yeah, that's kind of what we go over. We also help during the application season and helping you with professional planning. We are partnered with many of the professional schools here on campus, such as the School of Medicine, SCAG School of Pharmacy, and the academic department. So the we have so bio, chem, psych, public health, and human development that we're partnered with, as well as global health and the colleges, as well as pre-health organizations such as HMP3, American Medical Student Association, Transfer Non-Traditional Student, and more. Okay, so what should you utilize before meeting with one of us or even in the interim? So we talked about the HealthBeat website. So as you can see, that's on there. Definitely check that out. I did allude to the one-on-one handshake appointments, which we, there are about 10,000 students, give or take, for pre-health pre-med. So we definitely want you to utilize the resources first, but we do our best to accommodate by doing orientations like this, and we have our YouTube, but one-on-one handshake appointments you can definitely schedule with us. They're about 30 minutes, and it's typically we release appointments 2 to 3 weeks out, depending on the time of year. So if you don't see anything, just keep checking. Students will cancel, and then we'll release a batch 2 to 3 weeks out. And then we have our Career Center YouTube, which we talked about. If you just Google UCSB Career Center, you can definitely find us on there. And then we have our workshops and conferences. So our meds workshop, or our meds conference rather, is in the winter quarter. It is a great way to network, great way to learn about medical schools. There are different breakout sessions to learn more about any topics that you might be more interested in, maybe a specialty in medicine that you might be interested in, or in healthcare. We also have our underrepresented in medicine conference, which is spring quarter. And that is for students who are traditionally underrepresented in medicine, and it's very similar to the Meds conference. We also have our FMPH 95 course, or Medical School Prep 101. It is held in the winter and the spring, and it's typically for first year, second year, and first year transfer students. Last but not least, we have our quarterly drop-in week. Again, we work with the many students. So if you could definitely come to our drop-in week. I'll also talk about office hours towards the end. And drop-in week is around the drop deadline around week 4. So definitely join us. We help you kind of understand which classes may be helpful to take for your chosen career.
All right, so we're going to transition into talking about professions and academics. What I have here is an initial breakdown for everybody to think about the various professions that you may be looking into or getting into. I know we have a lot of students here that are looking at medicine, but we also advise on all the other healthcare professions. So that includes things like physician assistant, nursing, dentistry, pharmacy, physical therapy, even helping students that are looking at healthcare from a public administration or public health lens. And so really what we're trying to do is make sure that you're aware of not only the different pathways of professions that are available to you, but also some of the baseline expectations when it comes to amount of time in school necessary to get through and be trained up, as well as a general note of expectation around admissions and GPA. So just to give you an idea, one of the most intensive pathways, of course, is going to be pursuing an MD or DO, so allopathic or osteopathic medicine to be a physician. Both of them, being a doctor in general, requires 4 years of your academics. Within your academics, it's divided typically into about 2 years didactic / lecture, then 2 years clinical rotation. And by clinical rotation, that's typically both a combination of simulated lab as well as on-site in-hospital and clinic experience, where you are going through the process with other trained professionals. So those are kind of standard things that we expect for medicine as far as your formal education. In addition to that, medicine requires about 3+ years of residency. We say 3+ because for some areas of medicine, You can go straight in after 3 years. So things like internal medicine, family practice, those tend to be shorter residencies. But there are other areas such as specialties and subspecialties where you may have additional years that you are doing in order to specialize. And then in addition to that, for my students that are doing things like fellowship or MD PhD, you may be doing even more years to do those other areas that you are incorporating into your overall medical education. So I always just tell everybody, medicine has in itself a lot of different options. You're not going to decide on those options until really you are in medical school. So as far as specialties, psychiatric, obstetrics, family practice, that doesn't even really become a conversation until maybe going into the end of your third year of medical school and then applying for residencies, to see where you land. Okay. Besides medicine, I also like to use as a point of comparison programs like physician assistant and nursing, because these programs let you go into clinical practice a lot earlier, because a lot of times they won't require additional residency or specialization, but also because their academic timeline is shorter, right? They have a very specific role and ability to execute on. And so we're going to see for PA nursing, usually 2 to 3 years worth of training. The only caveat I have for that is that even though there's 2 to 3 years of training, that you are going to do to get certified, and you might not have to do any additional clinical work afterwards. Most of these programs require some level of healthcare experience beforehand. PA especially is one of those areas where we see upwards of like 2,000 hours of clinical experience. So when thinking about the profession, I don't want students not only just to think about the title, but I want them to think about the year and time that's going to take to get there, the requirements academically that they're going to need to consider for that profession, as well as just in general the type of work that they may want to do, and that there's all these different pathways to do it. So we get a major question all the time, which is, what major do I choose? And a lot of times we just tell them, choose a major that interests you. Whoops. So as far as why, it's because really once you are getting your prerequisites done, you will be able to pretty much say, okay, I've done at least the bare minimum sciences in order to apply to whatever healthcare profession I'm applying to. The requirements for a profession do not always line up with a major. I'll just say that right now, right? So really a major that you're doing should be something that you are at least interested in, so that when we're thinking from an admissions perspective, you know, can you perform well in something that you have an interest in, like? Hopefully the answer is yes, right? The other thing that we think about is sometimes for our students, say my students that are in non-science based majors, they may want to get easier access to prerequisite science coursework. Well, sometimes that means that a minor or a double major may be something you want to consider. Again, not always, because there are many non-science majors that you may still have room to fit in all of your prerequisites without having to declare a minor or a second major in order to get access. Those are conversations you should have with your academic advisor, but I do bring it up because a lot of students wonder if your major is going to play a large determinant factor in your admissions process, and typically the answer is no. Other things that we usually get questions on are AP or IB credit, and essentially any credit where you are given college level credit for classes or units in general towards your college education. And they can come in from, more than one place. Like I have some students that have IB credit, and so that is international baccalaureate credit. I have other students that have academic credits through AP or similar processes. And so one of the things we remind everybody is, even if you wanted to take these courses again, you don't have the ability to do it easily at UC, because once you receive college credit for something, you can't do it again. Or if you do, it's out of pocket. It doesn't go towards your academic profile, and it doesn't get calculated into your university GPA towards graduation. And so there's just a lot of things that we strongly do not recommend doing, one of which is taking courses that you've already received credit for in general. And so the reason why we do that is because, or we say that is because a lot of students will say, okay, if I have AP credits, then how is that going to work with graduate school? And then I'll say this much. Most graduate programs nowadays, especially the ones that are, say, state funded or work heavily with community programs, are going to be aware that um, a lot of these students coming in have AP units in lower division coursework. That is perfectly fine. A lot of times what they're going to hope or publish on their website is they're going to say either advanced credit in the same area. So have you taken other rigorous coursework that rely on or are advanced versions of the courses that you've received AP credit for? That might be an option. Other ones might say that, if you do well on the MCAT, we don't really need to question whether or not you are proficient in that area. Most of the time when people are concerned about AP credit being taken or not, the real question they should be asking is, does the institution I'm applying for want to know if I've taken college level coursework within those areas as a college student? So a lot of times that's why we can see justifications for upper division coursework. Worst case scenario, if there's a school you absolutely want to get into, out of the 155 that will not budge on, AP physics for some reason, then maybe you can take it at the community college. But by and large, a lot of our students do not feel obligated to retake courses that they've already received college credit from. So I want to put that out there. We can always work with you on that if you do decide otherwise. But our general rule of thumb is it's better to focus on all the rest of the coursework that you need to complete for purposes of applying into your graduate programs, and then reassess whether or not we may want to consider an additional course here or there to help supplement. That leads me to the other question that we get, which is, can I take community college courses to help supplement some of the areas I might have received either AP credit for, or maybe just have a hard time getting access to at the UC? Perfectly fine and acceptable. So, a lot of students sometimes feel like they want to get these courses done elsewhere, and it's perfectly acceptable by and large to get them done at the community college. I have some students that will look at summer session 2 within the community college because it'll fit in their schedule nicely to maybe knock out a few extra science courses. And Jay, do you have anything you want to add on that note?
No, I think we're good.
So real quick, as far as course content, we have on the left side just a general breakdown of what we usually see students able to take at the UC in order to fulfill med school requirements. And then on the right side, we have courses that are more outlined to be either supplementary coursework that could be helpful for medicine, but are primarily more important in a few of the other professions. So I'll start for the left. Again, this is not a exhaustive list, but this is a pretty general list of what students can do to fulfill different requirements for purposes of medicine. I will always, always, always recommend a couple things, which is one, double check your specific profession on the HealthBeat website for a more comprehensive listing and discussion of information, as well as there are some variations in general with graduate programs. So we can always take the time to look at the admissions website of some schools that you may be targeting. But by and large, what we provide you on the left, which is also published on the website in our 4-year plans, will typically help you make sure you're completing everything. On the right side, I'm going to call out 3 specific courses that are going to be more critical for professions such as nursing, PA, dentistry. That would be physiology, microbiome, and anatomy. Those courses usually are expected to be courses taken with lecture and lab, especially for things like PA and nursing. Some admissions programs will specifically call out these courses as separate classes that you need to complete in addition to additional biology coursework. And so the reason why they do that is because if they call it out specifically, there may be a part of the admissions review process where they utilize these courses to gauge how prepared or ready you are. which would mean that they will add or assign a certain value to their grading criteria for applications for some of these courses. Other than that, for my medicine folks, these are still great courses that you could take because a lot of times it's good enrichment or helpful context for you to navigate as you are applying to graduate programs, especially within medicine, and you want to show your ability to do well in some of these advanced topics. Now that we're talking and gone over some of the basic of courses, I do want to address course load. So you are incoming students, which means that full time for you is only 12 quarter units, and this is for all UCSD students. However, a lot of students will target 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 units. That could be fine. My biggest ask of students is, especially during our first quarter, if you feel like you need to take a lighter load to make sure that you can handle the course content and perform well, it is better to do well in the courses that you have than tack on extra units and not perform at the level that you need to show strength. GPA is a game of diminishing returns in that if you have a misstep, it takes more and more units to kind of climb back up, and it's a lot more difficult to make a case for yourself if you are constantly playing catch up when it comes to performance and doing well. That doesn't mean that it's out of the question. If you have a misstep, it's over. It just means that the easier you can make it for yourself to build a strong GPA, the less likely you have to do on the tail end to kind of remedy or account for that as part of your application process. But I want to make sure to remind students about that, because one of the important things to think about is pacing and making sure that you can handle the course load that you sign up for, right? We still have opportunities in the summer. We still have community colleges. We still have plenty of your academic years left in order to complete these courses. So we want to make sure, especially at the beginning of your academic career, you are taking the time to think critically and assess, can I handle the level of coursework that I signed up for? And if you do have to change things or drop courses, that's why we're even going to have a week 4 even drop in week, where students can drop in after they've probably talked to academics about dropping course, just to see how that might affect their decision making process with the future things they're working on with their profession. So I just want to put a highlight there for everyone when it comes to course load and pacing. Now, speaking of course load and pacing, we have a lot of students that talk about or ask about gap year. If you're not sure, gap year is the time spent between graduation from college and matriculation into medical school or graduate school. I will say, whether or not you are considering a gap year, you don't have to figure that out just this moment, okay? Gap years should not be viewed as the exception to the rule. They're actually quite common, right? If we look at the WMC information, very often we'll see anywhere from 65 to 70%, usually around 68% of students needing to take one or more. Usually one or more is 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 years in their data to take additional time before applying, which means that by and large, a majority of students actually do require additional time before they apply to medical school, and that's perfectly acceptable. For those who don't plan on taking a gap year, that might be okay for them, assuming that maybe they had a lot of extra units come in, or they're in a combination of major and college where you can complete a lot of your education pretty quickly. So it might be fine for you to not have a gap year. And it's really ultimately going to be a question of, am I going to have everything I need, both academically and experientially, on my application so that I'm a strong applicant when I apply? Regardless of what year at school I'm in, or if I'm already graduated, it always should be from the context of, am I doing everything that I need to in order to be successful on the application process? And with that, Jade, I'll hand it over.
Absolutely. And, before we get into experiences, we really just want to kind of set the stage and kind of really organize everything, right? So Ron talked about academics. And that is a large part of your graduate school application. It's maybe about 50%. And then the other half are your experiences, your extracurriculars, your letters of recommendation, your personal statement. We'll get into some of these today with the focus on experience, but we just want you all as students because, you know, you're incoming new students and we want you to take things step by step. So before you focus on experiences, we want you to focus on academics. Make sure that you have that down. Also, you know, pacing yourself, like Ron talked about, which is super important because your mental health, right? Many students are transitioning into an environment they've never been in before, maybe with a roommate they've never met, maybe trying to find where to do their laundry or where to get their food. And so you really want to think about how you can make sure you have a good couple of quarters of transitioning as well as doing well in academics before you overload your plate with too many units or too many extracurriculars. I would say start with your academics, getting involved with a couple of groups, which we'll go over, and then go into clinical extracurricular experience. So many of you have heard about clinical and volunteering and what that looks like. So we're going to give you a couple of definitions just to make sure you know what each is. And so let's start with service. Service is a direct, meaningful interaction that aims to fulfill a need for a vulnerable community with a long-term impact. Some examples are working with refugees, working with the homeless, low income family, historically marginalized communities, for example. And some organizations here at UCSD are going to be the Mustard Seed Project, Education Corps, Homeless Heal. Okay, so that's service. It can be related to or unrelated to healthcare. It just depends on which opportunity presents itself. Now let's go over to clinical experience, which I think most people have heard of or know about, but I want to give you a definition for this to help you out. So clinical experience is a direct interaction with patients with the aim of providing medical service or education. This is typically done in a clinical or hospital setting, and you're contributing to the patient's healthcare outcomes. Okay, so that there's almost like four criteria that you want to look at when you're looking at clinical experience. Okay. Some examples of this are emergency medical technician, certified nursing assistant, phlebotomy, medical scribing, medical assisting. And so you may have heard of some of these. And yes, these generally do count as clinical experience as long as they hit those four areas that we talked about. I do want to mention that shadowing is not considered clinical experience. Okay, it is absolutely necessary. It's great to get a letter of recommendation, or it may not be absolutely necessary if you can secure a letter of recommendation, hopefully through your clinical experience, and learn enough about the day-to-days of the chosen career field that you're going into. And you know that is enough information for you. But shadowing can definitely take the place of getting to know a physician, building rapport, hopefully getting a letter of recommendation. So some organizations at UCSD are Emergency Medical Services, Flying Samaritans, International Health Collective, and Global Health Brigades. We'll go to the next slide. Okay, so we also get the question of research experience. What is it? Is it important? So research experience is basically doing some sort of research, either in a wet lab, a dry lab, really using statistical methods. And I would really say consider it only if it interests you. Believe it or not, it is not a requirement for most programs. There's a couple caveats, being that if you want to pursue an MD, PhD experience, you are required to get 5,000 hours of experience, research experience. And also maybe if you want to go to an institution that maybe highly values research, such as it's in the mission statement, maybe culturally that it's a research institution. Other than that, your academic and your clinical experience are your top priority over research experience. I do want to give you 5 different areas of experience as well. We're only covering 3 so far, but I'm going to give you 5 total, which is also on our 4-year timeline through our HealthBeat website. The 4 areas are healthcare experience, service, shadow, research, and leadership experience. Okay, so that's 5 different areas. And I would say the most important, because we do get that question, is going to be your clinical experience. Okay. And then everything else, definitely try whatever you would like. Maybe try one of each of in those 5 areas that I mentioned, and then whatever interests you the most, follow that. So I have some students who are very interested in service. They really want to be of help and of service to others. Okay, and so they will capitalize on their service experience. Or working with refugees or working with the homeless population, right? Some people really value innovation, and so they focus on their research experience. I would say whatever is specific to your long-term career goals is going to be what you want to focus on, kind of get a depth on. We say breadth is good, so maybe try one of each of the areas, but you want to stick with 1 or 2 experiences that you really are committed to for long term. Maybe that's a year, maybe that's 2 years, or maybe that's the entire time that you're here at UCSD. Some benefits, though, of research are, and I kind of touched on this, is it's a good networking opportunity to get a letter of recommendation from your principal investigator or your PI. Okay, so that is a pro. Many students will really enjoy research. They'll actually stay in a position because they do think that this would be a very strong letter for them when they apply to medical school or graduate school. So we wanted to cover that for you all. Next slide. Let's see. Next slide, Ron.
It should be up.
What was that?
It's up. Can you see it?
I do see research experience. I don't see the next slide.
It's visible on our end.
Oh, there it is. Find mentors and build relationships. Okay, great. So, on the kind of the topic of letters of recommendation, finding mentors and building relationships is generally important uh, when pursuing a career in healthcare, and really, honestly, any career. You will almost always need some sort of referral or letter of recommendation. So, one way to build more of a relationship with your professors or instructors are to go with to coffee and dine with a professor. That is a program here at UCSD, and it's just a great way to get to know your professor, build rapport, ask questions. The other way that I think are pretty feasible are office hours and taking multiple classes from the same professor. I'm going to kind of list those together because if you're taking multiple classes, then if you're sitting in the front row, you're asking questions, you're going to office hours, they're going to remember you, especially obviously if you do well in the class, right? If you get an A or a B, this is a good foundation to hopefully ask for a letter of recommendation. Other ways is we talked about research. You can also take smaller classes, which typically is towards the ends of your time here. So your third and your fourth year and your upper division coursework, you'll notice that your class sizes for your major start to get smaller and smaller in your lecture, which is helpful. And last but not least is joining an affinity group. Many people ask, what is an affinity group? This is a group where you are gathered with other people who share a similar identity. So that may be first generation college student, maybe that might be your gender, maybe that might be your faith, maybe that might be a hobby such as gaming or bike riding or whatever. So join an affinity group because we want you to get involved. Research and studies show that the more involved you are on campus, the more you ask for help, the more you use resources, the more successful you'll be actually here in your institution and beyond in your career. So we need you to get involved. You don't want to just go to class and then go eat and then go home and then go study and then go back to class and then go eat, do your laundry and then go home. We want you to join the clubs, join organizations. So the affinity group is one. The second group that we would want you to prioritize is a career related group. So that is a group such as American Medical Student Association. Maybe it's PUMP. So basically, I forgot how the acronym, but this is basically a undergrad pharmacy student association. And all of these can be found on the Center for Student Involvement. And there's many different groups that you can look at and see, what will catch your interest. So just to kind of recap so far is doing well with your academics, taking a month or two to really transition, understand kind of your lifestyle here on campus, as well as how you can balance that with getting good grades. Because if your grades drop, it is difficult, as Ron said, to kind of get that back up. And then from there, it's building relationships, joining affinity groups, joining career related groups. And then I would say start looking for opportunities that are clinical, research, service, etc. So starting out, as I was alluding to, create that personal plan, including your self care. There are great resources on campus, including counseling and psychological services. If you feel overwhelmed, if you feel like you just need someone to talk to, counseling and psychological services offers free one, or really you pay for it in your student fees, right? But you don't have to pay extra for this service. So you'll be able to meet one-on-one with a counselor or a psychologist. And it's just a great way to really talk about things that you may need just a professional to talk with. From there, definitely join a student org, as we talked about. Follow our Facebook and our Instagram, which will give you our handles at the end. Everything that we schedule, we post on our Facebook and our Instagram. So definitely go there, and then it'll link you to our handshake. Um, we students ask, when should we start looking for summer opportunities? And we say look in the early winter, because it takes a couple months to kind of solidify that. And so that'll be, for healthcare, service, research, etc. Next is self reflection and identifying your why. I would start that now. Many students, they ask, how can I stand out on my applications? And the way to do so is to really solidify your reason for pursuing healthcare, and to communicate that in a concise way through your experiences, through your letters of recommendations, and through your personal statement, as well as in your interviews. If you're able to really show that you're a developed individual, for medical school, for example, the AAMC website has a list of 17 core competencies that you can look at and make sure that you meet by the time that you apply, okay? So these 17 core competencies are things like multicultural competency, ethical responsibility, things that you really learn outside of the classroom. Okay, so really kind of work on developing as an individual throughout your time before you matriculate. From there, you can start learning more about healthcare and focusing on academics. Excuse me. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so final tips, as we said, focus on academics, familiarize and utilize your resources, create a personal timeline. Remember, it's a marathon, not a race. About 70% of people, almost, of students rather, take a gap year, which Ron explained is the time between graduating and matriculating into graduate school. And last but not least is finding mentors and building relationships. I would say the two biggest limiting steps for students in getting into graduate school, specifically medical school, are letters of recommendation and GPA. Okay, so build relationships as best you can, keep your grades up, and manage, create a plan. I actually tell students, create a plan that encompasses your full time here. So maybe that's 4 years, maybe that's 3 years, maybe that's 5 years, whatever that looks like for you. Include your extracurriculars, and include, MCAT or entrance exam study, and just include that and make sure that you're going at a good pace, and you can definitely keep following up with that and seeing if it still works for you. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Ron to talk about some events that are coming up.
Right, and I'll just zip through our upcoming events so that we can have time for Q&A. Friendly reminder, though, if we're talking about experiences and putting yourself out there, we have the career fair coming up October 10th. It's a really good opportunity for my pre-health students, not only to have face-to-face with potential recruiters on these different experiential opportunities, right? We could have a research lab, we can have a representative from a healthcare system, we can also even have graduate schools, so professional schools, including healthcare, show up as admissions representatives able to talk to you about their general expectations of what they would like to see. And maybe you can even ask, I'm here at the career fair, I'm talking to you as a graduate school. I would love to know, what would you like to see in your applicant pool? right? And they can tell you right there. So this is a great opportunity for students. And then for our schools that can't make it in person, we do a virtual session kind of as a good way to have maybe 30 people to one presenter, or maybe even some one-on-ones, depending on the graduate and professional school, if they're wanting to do some initial more kind of one-on-one conversations with students as well. So there's a great opportunity for our students. I wanted to put that out there as we're talking about getting you ready for the year. In addition to getting you ready for the year with the career fair, we also have our Career Center overview series. And really what it does is it gives you all the different pieces that you need to have a really strong portfolio for applying to experiences, right? You know, we had mentioned experiences are critical, and sometimes it's a matter of having a good resume, a good cover letter, having a game strategy for networking and putting up a good LinkedIn profile, maybe putting a strategy together around, okay, what experiences do I want to target and what years, what are things to consider, even basic tips on interviewing for some of these opportunities. So we want to make sure that you do know that we have these weekly almost workshops that we do during around lunchtime for students to come in and work on those areas that they need help with in order to start generating all of these critical experiences. Besides that, like Jade and I had mentioned, there's a course, FMPH 95, which we go over everything from core competencies to preparing for your healthcare profession. There is a focus specifically towards medical school, but we still cover other professions such as pharmacy, PA, and nursing as part of that, as a comparative and understanding, healthcare as a whole. So it's a good opportunity for students to get some one-on-one time with us in kind of a more direct setting. We usually have about a class of anywhere from 40 to 45 students, and that's winter and spring quarter. Sorry you missed open house, but if you were there earlier this week, glad to have you. Another reminder is we do again have that 4 weeks, or excuse me, week 4 drop-in. And week 4 drop-in is really designed for students to log in virtually and just check in with us with maybe some of the frequent questions that are coming up for you with kind of planning and thinking about your time here. So it's a good opportunity to get a lot of quick questions answered. In addition to that, Jade has been nice enough to kind of pilot seeing how some initial additional office hours for pre-health are going to be available this quarter. So keep an eye out for that, September 30th through October 3rd. And then with that, we can get on to Q&A. I will say that a copy of these slides should be sent over to everyone. And then last but not least, mentoring. We do have Tritons Connect. So for my students who are looking at maybe asking an alumni who is also a healthcare professional, how did they get into their position? What did they do? What was helpful for them? Utilize this network, right? Tritons Connect is only UCSD students, faculty, staff, and alumni. So it is a great opportunity for our current students to reach out to those who are already successfully doing their profession. And a lot of the alumni on there are more than happy to talk about what did they do, what are their thoughts about their career, and really give you some perspective from somebody who's been there. So with that, we can kind of switch it over to questions. Jade, if you don't mind, I'm probably going to put up the Q&A or the QR code. That way, as we answer questions, students can go ahead and fill out a quick little survey just to let us know if there's other things that you would like in our presentation. How did we do? Is there anything else that we can do to help improve your experience with it? But with that, we can kind of jump onto our Q&A section while we have the QR codes up. All right.
Awesome.
Do you want me to go, or do you have an answer ready to go for some of the Q&A?
Yeah, we have 3 questions so far. So the first one, will taking a double major in the arts help or not necessarily influence a med school application? So no, I think Ron kind of touched on this. Choose a major that interests you. There are just so many different areas that they're going to be looking at. The admissions committees will be looking at when you apply to medical school. It's really going to be your overall theme, your overall mission statement, your overall why, and how you portrayed that through your time here. Now, if you want to double major, I say go for it. but don't think that it's actually going to truly help your application. There's too many other elements of the application to applying to medical school that they're going to be looking at to really look. Yes, rigor. So academic rigor is one of them, but the prerequisites are rigorous enough. So do well in the prerequisites. And they'll look at, you know, how active are you in your experiences? Are you holding down a full-time job, for example, while taking classes? So they're really holistically reviewing you. So the short answer is no, you don't need to double major. I'm going to jump to the last one, and if you want to answer the second one after, Ron.
Yep.
So do letters of recommendation generally need to come from upper division classes in later years or undergrad, or does that not matter? I would say overall, yes, it could be helpful to have letters of recommendation if you're getting one from a professor from your upper division coursework, because your upper division coursework is more relevant to your medical school coursework. So your lower divisions such as chem, bio, right? Those are foundational courses that you definitely need to do well in. But as you get to OChem, anatomy, physiology, that's a little bit closer and more relevant to your medical school courses. So if you do well in that and get a great letter of recommendation, yes, it will help you. But I would say I'm going to over recommend here because I know we touched on letters of recommendation a bit, but you need 4 to 6 letters of recommendation. I'm going to over recommend and say 6. And this is, I'm going to kind of give this example for Ivy League schools specifically. So that's 3 letters from professors, 2 from a non-science professor, 2 from a science professor, 1 from a non-science professor. And then you should have a physician or a related healthcare professional write you a letter, a PI if you do research, and a supervisor. Okay, I'm over recommending. You can definitely get away with a science professor, an MD, and a couple other people that know you really well. Maybe a supervisor, maybe an attending physician you worked under. The point of the letter is to really just co-sign and add a testimony to what you're saying about yourself in your personal statement. Okay, and it's just giving more evidence to, okay, this is a solid person and they're ready for medical school. So I hope that answers your question.
And then I have like 3 different MCAT questions, so I'm just going to knock them all out at once, okay?
Okay.
So which of the courses should be taken for MCAT? Realistically speaking, all of the courses that are listed as prerequisites that we publish on the HealthBeat website are ones that we would recommend that you know so that you have a very solid foundation for the MCAT. Besides that, for the students who do have additional room in their academic history or in your unit totals for your time here at the UC, we also list or publish highly recommended courses such as genetics, physio, microbio. You know, that list that we have there of highly recommended is highly recommended primarily to better prepare you for both MCAT material as well as just be you'll have a stronger foundation before hopping into medical school. And additionally, I did notice that there was a couple students asking about, you know, if I've already taken AP credit for something like build 1, 2, and 3, but we're planning to retake it for the MCAT. Well, should I do that at community college? Well, the first thing I would say is, you know, can you take an upper division bio and still feel fine? Right? If the answer is I enrolled in an upper division bio and I didn't do as well as I would like, then maybe we do need to consider something like the community college and redoing a couple basic bios or general bios to kind of help build up your foundation. But if you already have the knowledge, my argument would be, do you have enough knowledge to perform successfully in some of those upper division biology coursework I just mentioned? Because from a bigger perspective, if you have the room to actually take more of the highly recommended courses that we provide, that might be a better route for you, not only to demonstrate your ability to do well in biology, but get quicker to those critical courses that can help you study better for the MCAT. So that would be my initial advice when it comes to thinking about the MCAT and classes. The other question that I saw about MCAT specifically was timing. I'm going to try and make it as easy as possible to think about it. MCATs are usually taken the year that you apply. If you are going to take it, I see a lot of students consider The latest that they would take an MCAT maybe January through March, the right before the application so opens in May. Okay, the reason being is that that's the latest is because it takes 30 to 35 days to get your results. And ideally, you are going to know what your results are before making a decision about how do you feel about that in relation to the schools you want to apply to. Is that fine for you, or do you need more time? Okay. Some students will even take the MCAT in October, the year that they're going to before the year that they apply, or leading up to their application timeline. In general, though, I would recommend you, regardless of when you do your MCAT, give yourself at a bare minimum 3 months of studying, 15 to 20 hours a week. That's my bare minimum. But we've seen people need to also mentally prepare for anywhere from 6 months to 3 months as a range for a lot of people for studying. So part of getting through your prerequisites is also getting an idea of how much additional time you are going to need in order to be successful.
Awesome. Okay, so trying to see the order. Okay, so I'm a sophomore. So am I still eligible to take FMPH 95? Um,
If there's room.
sometimes we've, yeah, thanks, Ron. Sometimes we've opened it up to sophomore, so yes, possibly. So if you're already excused from taking 10A, 10B because you have credits, with just taking Math 11, fulfill the 1 year requirement for calculus and statistics, correct? Yes, it would. Um, the only thing is you'll want to check with your academic advisor just to make sure that you don't need 10C to graduate. Okay. So Ron and I are, we are specialists for what do you need for your chosen program. We are not specifically trained. We have like some knowledge, but we're not specifically trained on what you need to graduate in your degree program. So we do want to make that very clear. And we kind of tag team with your academic and college advisors with some of these academic questions as well. Regarding letters of rec, is it all right if you did not spend too much time with a professor but had a good experience? For example, took only one upper division class with this person. Use your critical thinking skills as far as do you feel like this would be a strong letter or not. I say overall, the longer someone knows you, the more intimately maybe someone knows you as far as like working with you on a day to day or have seen you in difficult situations and have seen your character, that is going to be the stronger letter. So, but you definitely, if you think it'll be a strong enough letter, you could get a letter from someone that you only took one class with, one upper division class with. Would you say that human, bio, and biochem are good majors if you're pre-health and want to work in PT, so physical therapy? Is taking anatomy at a CC during the summer if you haven't before necessary? Ron, do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, so I'll say this right away. Most majors are going to be fine. With PT in particular, it's a little complicated, okay? Mainly because PT requires physio and anatomy, right? And physio at UCSC is a little complicated in that we teach physio classes as upper division. So to do the full sequence of physio means that you have to get through some lower divisions before you can even touch human physio and physio lab, which is a big honky lab. But like 6 quarter units is large for a lab. Anatomy is taught at the UC, but under extended studies over the summer, Build X13. So you could technically take that here. For my students doing things like physical therapy, a lot of times it can just be more manageable in your schedule if you are going to just take it at the community college. And that's perfectly fine for a lot of physical therapy programs because they understand that sometimes students just need to finish the course elsewhere, right? So it's really going to just be a matter of if you can get it done at the UC, great. If not, community college is perfectly fine and acceptable. Ideally, if you're going to take those classes, I would try and take them closer to the time that you're applying, because a lot of the programs that have a call out specifically for physiology and anatomy would prefer to have those courses more recent than not during our application cycle. So those are some tips I would have specifically if we're talking about PT.
Awesome. And just so you all know, we'll try and answer all the questions. So we'll stay a bit after one. If you do have to log out, feel free, but we would love for you to stay to hear all of the questions that we answer. Okay, so how long is your MCAT score valid for use on applications? I believe it's 3 years, right?
Depends on admissions.
Mm,
Some of them will give you a little bit more leeway, but in general, 2 to 3 years is a good rule of thumb.
cool. If we are leaning on the clinical side of medicine and plan on working with patients, is research even necessary for us to do? No, remember, it's not necessary,
Mhm.
like we said. When would you recommend taking the MCAT? Is it too soon, sophomore summer going into junior year? Um, if you are graduating early, you can definitely taking your MCAT depends on when you are applying to medical school generally. Some people want to take it early just to see how they do, but just remember that you need certain coursework done by the time you take that class. Okay. So that's anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, right? Which you generally are not done with your sophomore year. So I would say generally, yes, it is too soon. It's going to depend on how quickly you've gotten the courses done. For example, if you've done community college courses and AP courses, that sometimes will kind of push you to sooner graduation. All right. What makes someone be considered as a pre-med student? I think we really went over that. So I'm going to skip that so we can get to the other questions. Um, so let's see, following up on the other person's questions about already having credits for 10A and B, do some medical schools not accept 1B credits after filling the prereq requirements? I'm not
Oh, IB
exactly
credit,
sure.
International Baccalaureate credit.
IB, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it depends on the school policy specific to IB. IB is a little complicated, right? But a lot of times they can make some justifications if you've taken at least a few advanced courses or courses that require those classes. So like for example, if somebody got a lot of math completed, but they got A's in physics, they're probably fine on calculus proficiency, right? And so it's kind of a use some critical judgment and also double check what are my target schools, because my target schools might have a very clear policy I want to just be aware of.
Alrighty. Do I really need 5 professor letters of recs if I have 2 to 3 from people I've shadowed or volunteered with, etc.? Yes, for some schools. Some schools will list specifically, we want you to have X amount of letters from this type of professor. So that's why I kind of over recommended, but some schools will just say 4 letters. I think the AMCAS, you need to submit like 4 letters basically.
Great.
Oh, 3 letters. Yes. Okay. So 3 letters. And then I would say quality is better than quantity. Okay. So you can definitely go with the minimum if you want, but 4 letters is what we recommend if you can swing that. Okay. Is public health a good major for pre-health? If you like it, sure. Nursing or medical, yeah, just make sure you take the prerequisites. I will say some majors have prerequisites built in to the degree plan, so it's easier. But I would say public health with a concentration in medicine sciences is probably a better one if you want to go into healthcare. Okay, let's see. Does it look bad if you take the MCAT more than once?
Not
Honestly,
really, but
but
however, caveat,
yeah.
usually it's the behavior behind how you take your MCAT, right? Because if I have somebody that's retaking the MCAT multiple times in short succession and not really performing well, then maybe it's more of a question of critical thinking and behavioral judgment on what you are doing versus somebody who might have taken the MCAT 3 times, but they had some different circumstances happen. The pandemic happened to a lot of people, so that changed when they could take the MCAT. But what's more important is understanding how the school's policies are on MCAT and if they have a preference with those with it. By and large, a lot of them will want to see when's your best score, and ideally, your best score is most recent. If we're thinking ideally, right? But most students should come into the strategy of focusing on getting it done one and done so that at least you're as best preparing with your first attempt, right? I have a lot of students that say, should I prepare to retake the test? No, because if you're preparing to retake the test, you're already assuming that you are not going to do well the first time around, which is problematic psychological thinking and approach for purposes of these tests.
Okay, I was just typing some answers for one-on-one meetings, so please refer to that in the Q&A. Um, do I need AP credits? Yeah, no, you don't. You don't need AP or IB credits. We just wanted to make sure that you know that if you did have them, how that'll affect things. Alrighty, cool. It looks like that's all of our questions. We do want to thank you for being here. We hope that this was helpful for you. We will send a recording via handshake to your email that you registered with later on, and directly after this, we'll send some slides for you, the slides that we use for you to take a look at. And with that, have a wonderful fall quarter and good luck. And we hope to speak with you soon.
Take care, everyone.